Hi, this is Dan Heisman. We're continuing with our series of videos to help you improve your chess game. Today I thought we'd go over one of my interesting games. Haven't done that very often. Today's game, my opponent is Dr. Orest Popovych. If you've never heard of Dr. Popovych, he was a strong enough player that he actually got invited to the U.S. Championship. I don't mean like the U.S. Open, but the U.S. Championship where they invite the top 12 or 14 players in the United States to play a round robin to see who's going to be the U.S. champion. And Dr. Popovych was strong enough that he was invited at least once to the U.S. Championship. And he was one of the stronger players in our PSCF Futurity that we played in 1990. And let's take a look at the game. So I decided that I was going to, instead of playing a regular line in the Sicilian, that I was going to transpose into a Botvinnik attack, and I figured if I could get a Botvinnik situation against Dr. Popovych, maybe that would make him think a little in the opening. So I played e4, and he played c5, and I played the extremely rare move c4 with the idea of going into a Botvinnik system. And Dr. Popovych immediately played knight to c6. So we're playing 40 moves in 2 hours. And I write down how many minutes I have left after each move, at least once I get out of the book. So it's kind of interesting what happens in terms of time in the opening. He plays knight c6, I play knight c3. He plays g6, I play g3, heading for a Botvinnik system. Bishop g7, bishop g2, d6. Knight on 1 to e2. Knight f6. Castle. Castle. And I play d3. So at this point, it's all book, and I've used 1 whole minute. How much time have I gained on the clock? Well, not much, as you'll see. So here, Dr. Popovych fairly quickly plays bishop d7. And I play h3, which Stockfish says is the best move. That's nice to know. And he plays knight to e8. And I play bishop e3. And he quickly plays knight to d4. At this point, I've now used 9 minutes. Stockfish says I should play queen to d2 here with a normal opening advantage of about a quarter of a pawn. I played rook to b1, getting ready for the break move. Dr. Popovych immediately played a5, which Stockfish says is the best move. Here, Stockfish wants me to play a4. I've never really seen the idea of playing a4 here. I don't think I considered that move. I considered playing queen to d2. The problem on queen d2 is he has bishop takes h3, and I can't play bishop takes h3 because of knight f3 check. So I really am stuck either playing f4 right away so my rook can guard that square, or king h2. So I took 8 minutes on this move. And I played king to h2. I guess I didn't like playing f4 right away. And Dr. Popovych immediately played bishop c6. And now I decided to play f4. The computer says now I can play queen d2, of course, because now there's nothing to take on h3. So Stockfish says after queen d2 I have a normal opening advantage. I played f4. Stockfish says that's not the most accurate move order. And Dr. Popovych should now play e6, but Dr. Popovych immediately plays f5. All right, so to show you how poorly my opening surprise went, here I am, instead of playing against a regular Sicilian, I'm transposing into an English opening. And I've used at this point 21 and a half minutes, and Dr. Popovych has used 2 minutes to get to this point. So obviously he's seen this before. And my idea of surprising him by not playing into the Sicilian has failed miserably. On the other hand, Stockfish says I do have a normal opening advantage of about 0.2. So that's good. And Stockfish says I should play pawn takes pawn, and if he takes with the knight, I should put my bishop back on d2. Interesting. Usually I would play bishop to g1 there. And it says white's better here by about a quarter of a pawn, maybe slightly more. Which is interesting because I would judge this position to be at best equal. So my evaluation of this position was probably incorrect. At least the position if I would take the pawn. So instead, I did play bishop to g1 right away. The idea here is, with my bishop on g1, I can play knight takes knight, and when he takes back with the pawn, he's not forking my bishop and my knight. This is a trick I learned from international master Bruce Rind, who liked to play the Botvinnik system all the time. And I asked Bruce, when I get to positions like this, I can't take his knight to double his pawns, what should I do? And he says, oh, play bishop g1 and threaten to do that. So that's what I did. And Dr. Popovych now creates all kinds of tension in the center by playing e5. And I thought for a while here, Stockfish says knight d5 retains the slight advantage. I played e takes f5 now. Stockfish says, not the best move. Maybe black is microscopically better now. Stockfish suggests black should play knight takes f5. More than microscopically better, actually, having a nice advantage of about half a pawn. Dr. Popovych played bishop takes g2, and Stockfish doesn't like that, thinks that I'm doing well now. It's funny how little things like this can make a big difference. Stockfish thinks that if black had left the bishops on the board and played knight takes f5, that black has a pretty big advantage, yet after bishop takes g2 and king takes g2, no matter how black recaptures on f5, it thinks that white is slightly better. So that's very interesting how just trading the bishops completely changed the evaluation from black being somewhat better to white being somewhat better. Okay, so after I recaptured, Dr. Popovych decided to take with the pawn, which Stockfish says is as good as anything. Thinks the position is either equal or white is slightly better. I played knight d5. Stockfish says that's the best move. Dr. Popovych played knight c7. I played knight on e to c3. Larry Kaufman calls these redundant knights, which are not good, but the idea is I want to be able to replace my knight with the other knight. And in some lines, I can take his knight and then play knight d5. Dr. Popovych says, you're not going to do that. He plays knight here. Stockfish actually says for him to take the knight is okay. And now I should take his knight, even though it resolves his redundant knights, which I didn't want to do. So here I played bishop e3. Not the best move, but I'm still about equal. Dr. Popovych moves the king out of the way. He wants to put the rook on the semi-open file and pressure me on g3. I play rook f2, possibly getting ready to either double the rooks on one of the files or simply keep the pressure in the center. Dr. Popovych naturally plays rook to g8. And now I play the best move, which is actually a dangerous move, queen to h5. And I have to watch out because my queen could easily get trapped up here if I'm not careful. So Dr. Popovych plays queen to d7. And now Stockfish wants me to play king h2. I played queen h4. Again, dangerous. The queen now has no diagonal to come back. And Stockfish says the game is about even. Black develops his last rook to the f file. Rook a f8. I play my best move, king h2, getting the king out of the way. Dr. Popovych plays rook f7. Now Stockfish wants me to put my queen back on h5 where it came from. I play rook on 1 to f1. And Dr. Popovych plays his best move, b5. I can't really take because it undermines my center. He can just capture back. So I play b3, which the engine says is as good as anything. And Dr. Popovych plays b4. The engine said maybe it's slightly better for him to take on f4, with maybe a slight advantage to black. So he plays b4, I play knight to e2. The evaluation is 0, 0, 0. At this point, I have 36.5 minutes left, and Dr. Popovych has 54 to make the next 14 moves. So I'm mildly in a little bit of time pressure, not a lot. And now Dr. Popovych makes a very provocative move. At this point, the evaluation is 0, 0, 0, and I'm sure Dr. Popovych wanted to win. So he made a move which really unbalances the position and sets up a tremendous amount of complications. It may not look it, but it does. He plays e4. Okay, so here I already came up with an idea that I was going to sacrifice the exchange on f3 because he's going to check me and fork my king and my queen, and I could stop him right now by moving the queen or moving the king, but instead I'm going to give up my rook for a knight and a pawn. And with the idea that, you know, I've got a lot of pressure on the king side with my extra pawn, and my minor pieces are very good, and he's giving up his best minor piece to do that. So I play d takes e. Stockfish says, this is very good for me. I thought it was good for me, but it was very complicated, and I didn't have a lot of time to figure it out. He plays f takes e. And now I play my best move. But in order to play this move, I have to go into unbelievable complications. So I play f5, best move, and I have 31 minutes left. Dr. Popovych says, all right, give me the exchange, and he plays knight f3 check. He has nothing better. Now he's forking my queen and my king, so I have to take it. Rook takes f3, e takes f3. And now I have a choice. I can take on e6, or I can take on f3 and just be down the exchange for a pawn. Stockfish says that it's better to be down the exchange for a pawn than to try to get the piece back. So I did not play rook takes f3 here. Let's take a look at that. Rook takes f3. He needs to save the knight. Where would a human save the knight? Well, a human might put the knight up on d4. Stockfish says if he does that, I have bishop takes d4, c takes d4, f6 hitting the bishop, bishop f8, knight d4. Now I have 2 pawns for my exchange. And it says black's completely busted. For instance, a4, king to g2, queen to e8, rook to e3, queen to a8 to pin the knight, rook to e2, a takes b3, a takes b3, queen a1, and now I'll move like knight f3. Black's all tied up, and Stockfish says I'm up 3 pawns. All right, so let's go back to the game. Whoops, that's not the game. Hold on a second. Okay, that's the game. All right, so we're back to the game. So in this position, after he plays e takes f, I have to make 11 moves, and I've got 30.5 minutes. And I take half of my 30.5 minutes. I go all the way down to 16.5 in this position. And instead of taking rook takes f3, which is the best move, I play f takes e6, creating tremendous complications. This is a very difficult counting problem now. So now black has to decide, does he want to take the knight and threaten to get a queen, or does he want to save his queen? This is a tough counting problem, and Dr. Popovych took his time, and he figured out the best move, which is to take the knight. I'm not really winning the queen here, because he can get my rook and get a queen. So there's tremendous complications here. So I play the best move here. I took half a minute and played rook takes f7. And now Dr. Popovych played the best move. If Dr. Popovych gets a queen here, then I'm simply going to take his queen. And if he checks me, I put the rook in the way, and I'm up a piece, and I have a pawn on the 7th rank, and this is resignable for him. So he can't do that. So he plays the best move after rook takes f7. He plays queen takes e6, saving the queen, and threatening to get a queen of his own. All right, well, I've got to do something. So I play rook to e7. This is the only move. Let's ask Stockfish how many good moves I have here. Stockfish says I could also play rook takes g7 here. Okay, so I played rook e7. I guess it was not the only move. And Dr. Popovych has to decide what to do. Well, he can't play queen takes e7, knight takes e7, and then get a queen. That would be a quiescence error because I have knight g6 smothered mate. Just to show you, that's a pretty mate. e1 queen. Sorry, knight takes e7, e1 queen, knight g6 mate. So he can't do that. That's part of the issue here. So what he does is he sacrifices the queen for the knight so he can get something. If he just gets a queen here, then I'll simply take off his queen, and he can start checking me. And I can't really get out of the checks, because if I go here and he goes here, I can't put the bishop in the way because he takes my rook. So he can get a draw here. Dr. Popovych does not want to draw. So he plays queen takes d5. And I play e takes d5. And now he gets the queen. All right, in this position, I have now about 9.5 minutes left to make 7 moves. And I took half my time. I went from 9.5 down to 4.5. And I played queen e4, and I have nothing better. The idea is I don't mind going into the endgame with my rook on the 7th rank and with a 2-on-1 majority if he wants to trade queens. So Dr. Popovych plays queen e2 check. He still has plenty of time. According to my notes, he has 30 minutes on his clock. He plays queen e2 check. Stockfish says that's not the best move, but he should be okay. I play queen g2. He takes. I was happy with this. I'm low on time, and I'm happy to trade queens into a more clear position. King takes g2. And now he plays bishop e5, hitting my pawn on g3. I actually don't mind this because it makes my moves fairly forced. I play g4. And now he plays a move. The Stockfish says he should play something like rook c8, getting ready to push this pawn. He plays h5. Stockfish is starting to make my advantage grow now. It's all the way up to a pawn or so. Because what's happening is my king is becoming more active. My king gets up to f3 to guard the pawn. And now I have the better rook and I have the better king. So he plays h takes g3 check. Again, I'm happy because my move is forced. I play back h takes g3. And he plays check. This is one of the most interesting positions in the game. I realized this was a critical position. If I go up king e4, he can get his rook behind me and win my pawns. If I play king e2, he can't do that. But then my king is much weaker than it would be in possible lines where maybe I sacrifice the exchange. But in order to calculate sacrificing the exchange here with my king in the middle of the board, I need time, and I don't have it. So I had 3 minutes left, and I remember playing this game, and I remember saying, boy, I want to use as much time as I can. And I think we were, if I remember right, we were using an analog clock. You know, this is 1990. So I can't run my clock down to like 2 or 3 seconds because it might fall. You know, with analog clocks, you can't really go to the last couple seconds because your clock could easily fall when you think you have 10 seconds left. So it's not like a digital clock where you know exactly how much time you have. So I remember analyzing for 20 seconds and then looking at the clock and then analyzing for 20 seconds and looking for the clock and analyzing for 20 seconds and looking at the clock, saying I need every second I can to figure out whether I want to play the aggressive king e4 or the passive king e2. And I thought it made a big difference. Now what's funny is while I'm talking here with you, Stockfish is analyzing the position and he's telling me that there's not a lot of difference between king e2 and king e4. But I didn't know that, and I suspected that there might be. And of course, you have to be careful because if you think that a move might be critical, you can't assume the best. You have to assume the worst, that it is critical. And that's what I did, and I couldn't figure out what to do. Right now, Stockfish at 36 ply says king e2 is a little better than king e4 by about 2/10 of a pawn. But I didn't know that. I thought king e4 was an aggressive move that might win the game, and king e2 was kind of a passive move that stops him from winning the game, but gives me less winning chances. So I ran my clock all the way down to about 30 seconds. At that point, I figured I better not take too much more time. So with a little less than 30 seconds left, I played the aggressive king to e4. And Stockfish tells me that my analysis was correct. He can't play rook to f1 and try to win my pawn. If he plays rook to f1, then I have a pleasant choice between rook takes e5 and bishop takes c5. If I play rook takes e5, he plays d takes e5. I play bishop c5. He tries to run over with his king. King takes e5. King f7. d6. King e8. And now I have another pawn to harass him. g5. I'm showing you the Stockfish's analysis. If he plays rook checks, king d5, king d7, g6. You can't go rook g1 here. So rook h1. And now g7 is met by rook checks followed by rook g5. So instead, bishop e3 to guard both these squares. Rook checks, king e4, rook h8, g7, rook g8, bishop d4, and now he can't take this pawn because my king comes up, but we'll show that. King takes, king f5. If he plays king e7, king g6. Now he's in a little bit of zugzwang. Let's say he plays king e8. I can start winning his pawns now with bishop b6 and bishop takes a5. And he's stuck and I'm winning. All right, let's go back to the game. So he can't play rook f8. What can he do? Well, what he can do here is get his king toward the center so that when I start playing bishop takes c5 or rook takes e5, his king's in the action. So Stockfish says his best move is probably king to g8. Dr. Popovych, I guess, didn't fully get the danger here. And even though he's past time control, or no, this is his last move before time control, but he's got lots of time. He has 20 minutes. He plays a4. And Stockfish says that just loses. So I play the number one move. Rook takes e5. I'm not worried about losing the exchange. I want to win a pawn for the exchange and get my king in the middle before his king can get over. So rook takes e5. Dr. Popovych, of course, has to take it. And I play bishop takes c5, which also gets me a tempo. He can't bring the king in because I'm hitting the rook. So bishop takes c5. Dr. Popovych plays a takes b, I guess hoping that I can take the rook, and then he just, pushes the pawn in and gets a queen. So I play a takes b. And he plays rook e8 to try to guard his pawn. And I play d6. And Dr. Popovych resigns. Why? Well, let's say he tries to bring the king in. King to g8. Now, Dr. Popovych pointed out the best move here is just to play bishop to b6 and on the next two moves get a queen. I actually looked at playing king to d5, which also wins. King f7. And now I can play d7, rook to d8, king d6, e4, bishop b6. If he plays e3, I can just take it with the bishop and then go back to b6. And he has nothing to do here. Black, if he moves the king, I just take off the rook. Now he pushes the pawn. I can come over here and guard the queening square and get a queen with check on the next move. So in this position, it's hopeless. I saw a win with king d5. Dr. Popovych saw an even faster win with bishop d6, no matter what he plays. So there's multiple ways to win this position, and Dr. Popovych resigned. This is the Futurity tournament. Even though I was 40 years old, when I was younger, we didn't have international tournaments. There was no, open section of the World Open when I was starting out where I can get FIDE ratings. So it wasn't until I was 40 years old and I was a full-time engineering manager that I got invited to one of these PSCF Futurities. And it was at this Futurity, the second Futurity, that I achieved my FIDE rating, which came out at 2285. And it was this tournament, and this is one of the games. I think after I played this game was in round 10. So I think I think there was 12 people playing, and I had to play 11. So I think after I won this game, I needed a draw in the last round to ensure that I would get the FIDE rating. But I'm pretty sure after this game I had it. So this is pretty much the game that ensured that I would get a FIDE rating. And of course, in those days, they didn't even have the FIDE title of Candidate Master for 2200 to 2300. That didn't come till later when FIDE wanted to make some extra money. So I came out at 2285, which is 15 points short of FM. I think Dr. Popovych was either an FM or an IM. You could look it up at FIDE.org. But anyway, so I came out 15 points short, and if I had gotten the extra 15 points, then I could qualify to be an FM as well. But of course, being 40 years old and being a manager and not being a professional chess player, that wasn't going to happen. So that ended up being my FIDE rating, because a year or so later, maybe in 91, I guess, I played my last tournament, which was the Liberty Bell Open, and retired after that about 30 years ago. All right, well, hopefully you enjoyed this game. It was really complicated. I remember during the game I said, boy, the computers are getting good now. Let me go home and give this game to the computer and see what I did wrong. And it turns out my computer wasn't as good as Stockfish. It didn't tell me what I told you in this video, that simply being down the exchange for a pawn is better than trying to get my material back with f takes e6. According to Stockfish, f takes e6, which I played, which was extremely complicated. This is a really complicated counting problem. F takes e6 is only good for equality, and rook takes f3 would give me close to a winning position. So I made a mistake in this counting position. I went through the tactics. I kind of figured it out correctly, but I evaluated it incorrectly. I would have been better off just staying down the exchange for the pawn. But, these are the kind of positions that are very, very complicated counting positions. And the fact that I was able to even get through the smoke without losing my shirt here, I was pretty happy about that. All right. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, we have about 16 videos and counting on my channel here, Dan Heisman Chess. So you can subscribe as well. And we'll see you next time. Bye.